Yay! Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's Matt.
All right. It's
Hey,
me.
Matt.
Back.
He's been risen from the dead by the red witch.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, nobody will be able to tell until, after the fact that this is our second try. So,
Yeah. No one's gonna know.
here we
Just
go.
right then.
So, episode 2. We got Ben, we got Brandon, we got
Hello.
Nick finally. We are
Hi.
ready to we are ready to talk about episode 2 of Game of Thrones. So, I'm going to cue up our little graphic one more time.
Here we go.
So again, last episode we talked about we saw the end with Daenerys saying, "Shall we begin?" And we had a bunch of other stuff with Arya and the Hound, who didn't appear in the second episode, but it was sort of like, here are all the chess pieces, now go. And then episode 2 was a lot of more chess pieces until the very end of the episode. But overall, what did you guys think of that? Of the new episode 2?
I'll go first. I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. I liked these new chess pieces that they were moving, setting things in motion. I commented earlier on our practice run that my favorite part of all the chess pieces was Arya's scene in finding out that Jon is the king of the North and her making that decision. She did such a great acting job, and that moment was really, really cool, where she had to choose between going back, and that was a really, really cool sequence. So I like that little chess piece moving, but I kind of like they're more advanced moves than like the first episode was just putting the pieces on the board. Now they're moving things. Now the pieces are moving.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that I liked it. I think I could have liked it more. The first 75% of the episode felt like more chess pieces. It was all good because I love these characters. It was interesting. I said it. I feel like all these characters have kind of developed their stories in Essos and Westeros and different parts of the map or whatever. And so it kind of felt awkward when they were just all thrown together and all kind of like meshing kind of quickly. Like it almost felt like there should be a little more time to like dive into the individual relationships. But that would just be more chess pieces. So I don't know if that would have been better. But it was pretty good. I felt like it's just so fast. You can tell just by how quickly they're integrating these people together and their plans and just moving forward, that they have so many things that they need to get to, that they're just kind of ramming through some of this. So it was good. And then the end was fun. So it was pretty solid. I felt like it was slightly more enjoyable for me than the first episode, which I also liked but didn't love.
Imagine how jam-packed it would have felt if Cersei hadn't done us the favor of killing off 5 plot lines last year with the Sept of Baelor.
Yeah.
I liked it quite a bit. I also liked the first episode quite a bit. I really liked the kind of the stage setting, and while I don't disagree with Nick in that we're seeing a lot of different pieces that's been building up to this moment when we'll finally get these two people talking, or these different groups talking, and now that we're here, it's like it's only getting a small amount of time, but it's just because there's so much story still to tell to kind of wrap up. That said, I loved I geeked out watching it, just these little pieces, like Tyrion's response to learning that Jon is king of the North, right?
Jon Snow.
And him making those callbacks to season 1 and the relationship that he had with, you could tell he truly kind of felt a bond with Jon Snow, and I was very happy to see that reflected in the story. So I really like that, and the different pieces. We'll get into all the different elements, but I liked it all. If I had to say one specific thing to jump out to me, is just the fact that I really like that they did this a little bit last episode, that we're going back and we're making sure that they're not leaving any stone uncovered, right? The little pieces like Nymeria, like Hot Pie, these different threads that maybe weren't hugely critical to the final story, they're at least going to be putting a bow on, and I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I always wondered if she ever ate that bread that was shaped like a dire wolf. You never know.
What about you, Matt?
No, I thought, watching it felt very much like we're gonna keep tying up the loose ends that you might not have even really thought about or cared about yet. It may play through, but it also was still very much like we're gonna be faithful to like how these sort of meetups and the maneuverings need to happen, like to sort of like, oh well, if Arya needs to find out, Jon is King of the North, and the events of what happened, so that she can eventually go meet up with them. How would she find out? And so, oh well, it makes sense that let's let her meet up with Hot Pie, and he's the one that tells her. But like, we're gonna show that scene, and we got to show you the steps to get to like all the big stuff that we really want to see, which is good. I was actually kind of surprised they went with, they kind of put the Night King and the White Walkers still kind of on hold in favor of like, I was kind of surprised they moved so quickly on the meetup with Jon Snow and Daenerys. But it sounds like there's already plans in place for Daenerys to sort of put the wheels in motion, I guess, of taking the throne. But yeah, I don't know. It felt very much like procedural until the very end, which I thought was relatively satisfying.
Speaking of the end, what did you guys think of the Euron Greyjoy, the sea battle that we had at the end? Did you guys like that?
Kind of shows how crazy he is.
I liked that it kind of increased your belief in him as a character, because until then you just heard him say, oh, I've sailed all over these places or whatever. Now you see that he's this crazy bastard. My favorite, quite possibly one of my favorite parts from the episode was, though, the Sand Snakes are being idiots like they normally are, annoying and very poorly acted, and then you're just like, oh, the Sand Snakes, and then he kills at least 2 of them. So I enjoyed that.
Definitely.
I the whole time, the death pool was a great idea, because the whole time I'm like sitting there like, oh man, there's like 3 people in play right now. What's gonna happen? It's kind of rooting for you guys, but also not.
Yeah.
Take a sip of that drink.
There was a chance there with Theon, and then he took a jump.
So let's be in our death pool. So I was all ready, because as Nick said, there was multiple people who were sort of in that final battle that could have bid it.
Yeah.
So as we see now, Nick, whose picks were made sort of after the fact, but we had Euron in play, or Euron, who, as I've been told, I'm mispronouncing it, but I'm going to refer to him exclusively as Euron now. Euron was in play. We had Theon. We had Ilaria. We also had. We haven't talked about it yet, but Melisandre made her return to the field, I guess. Not during that last scene, but
Sure.
She came back. And Jorah. My pick of Jorah might be going the opposite direction at this point, but
yeah, he's got. There's
Yeah.
now, right?
I like that sequence. I was commenting before how I like that edit of him sticking the needle and it's the pie again.
That edit was perfect.
It was really perfect. Yeah, that was a good edit.
I squealed out loud. It was beautiful.
So really the only major death we have is Yara, which we've kind of casually been like.
Did we see her killed though?
No.
Is she? I thought she died.
No,
He just took her. He just took her captive.
No, I think he's got Ilaria, which is the second one on my death pool. He's got her captured. Theon obviously jumped off, and Yar he also captured. He killed 2 of the Sand Snakes, possibly 3, but at least 2 of the Sand Snakes. We saw one of them hung, and the other probably by her whip, and then the other one's body was laying across the stern of that one ship. So he killed 2 of the Sand Snakes, but nobody on
Theon sucks.
I assumed that she was. Yeah, but yeah,
it's possible, but it's one of those Game of Thrones thing. I think at this point they especially with the main character, they kind of need to show him dying, or give us like a heavy like Stannis.
That's interesting.
I
so
think,
far the board's still in play.
I'm feeling good about mine though. With Alaria's capture, you think Cersei's going to want to keep her alive?
You've got the three bit. Yeah, Brandon's looking the closest, I think, with his.
Although Theon, I'm with you, Ben, in that he was slimy. And one of the main reasons why I even had him down here is I thought his story arc needed to be.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Now that he pushed out, though, he's got a little bit more of an arc. Like if he could have died right there if he just would have had some balls.
Once you betray,
but unfortunately, he doesn't have any.
Okay. I don't think there's any redemption for him.
when Jon Snow started strangling Littlefinger, I was a little at play, but I knew he wasn't going to kill him. You know,
That's true.
That would have been great.
Nobody likes him, right?
Yeah, we were talking about that scene before our malfunction, but that particular scene, Matt, was a really cool sequence of him and Jon Snow, and that's like the first time they actually ever talked to each other. And Jon Snow's like, "You don't belong down here," and then like he strangles him. I kind of enjoyed that moment.
So as you saw with my my screen before was I chose the screen cap that they, you know, one of the few like bigger releases of Littlefinger with Jon Snow. I thought that was like, oh, this is a huge meetup. You know, and like that scene didn't play out at all how I thought it would.
Do you think? What do you think?
It was very much like, oh, I'm onto you, and I'm going to defend. Like I'm protective of Sansa while I'm gone, and so, you like it set the stage for the next episode, and you get that little shot of Littlefinger being like kind of smarmy, looking at Sansa, like, oh, the Jon's away, the Littlefinger will play.
Well, here's my prediction now. Since he's at play on my board as the number one guy who's going to die, I think Brienne's going to kill him. I think that's what's going to happen.
Littlefinger?
Yeah, because she has to protect.
I think. Never mind.
No. Say it.
I liked the fact that for my death pool, I liked the fact that he had the altercation with Jon, because I feel like Littlefinger is constantly half truths, and when he said like his vision or whatever that drives him is him on the Iron Throne with Sansa. I do think he loves Sansa, but I think he loves the throne more.
Oh yeah.
And so I feel like he could potentially play Sansa to Cersei or something like that, because he could get to the Iron Throne that way, I guess. And Sansa or Cersei, one of the two people that Cersei wants revenge on the most is Sansa. So potentially, yeah, that would be cool. Boom.
You heard it here first.
I just want my people to die. It's just like fantasy football. Now I want the story to change so my people die. Thanks, Matt.
Well, I think it's also interesting that after she learned about what's happened at Winterfell, Arya changed direction. She's no longer heading towards King's Landing. So, I think that's something that might play into that as well.
Now that bumps me out that Jon is actually going, though, because like for whatever reason, I want her to meet Jon more than anything. He's leaving. She's gonna arrive. I don't know. It's a little bit of a bummer.
We can't have all the Starks together in one place.
Yeah. No.
I thought they were gonna go with the like Wolfpack team to like solidify Arya as the coolest character.
Well, you know what that scene I took as a metaphor of her, like her character, of how she's been alone. You know what I mean? And she still has to do things on her own. And you know, maybe a metaphor. Maybe she will probably make a decision to, you know, not rejoin. You know, maybe that was kind of like, you know, maybe I'm not a Stark anymore. You know what I mean? I'm just.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben, on the metaphor. I think it's also maybe it might be foreshadowing in the fact that Nymeria has almost went feral. She's no longer, you know, her puppy direwolf that she had when she was little. And you could make the same comment about Arya. So Arya's become so down that path.
Different.
I don't know when she quote unquote reunites with her family if she's going to feel that bond that you might expect her to feel, because she has kind of went feral. So I wonder if it's foreshadowing of of what she'll find when she gets at Winterfell.
There's a reason for that scene. There's a reason, and we'll find out.
At the very least, and again, as a book reader, it's nice to see some of these story threads that you just wonder if they're ever going to be given any attention to, kind of at least put a bow on. If we don't see Nymeria again, I like the fact that, you know, they did at least reunite and agreed to go their separate ways, or at least that Nymeria decided to go the separate way. I like that as a book reader, just getting that little note on the characters.
Mm-hmm. And she was huge.
Oh,
she is huge.
So much better than some of the previous work they've done with direwolves to try to make them look bigger, because they are huge. They're direwolves, right? And I thought it was very impressive how they had it set up, personally.
And were those her puppies? I take it.
I don't know if it was puppies, but it's at least her pack right now. And again, little bits and differences in the books. In the books, Bran is not the only one that can skin change, right? Or can green see. And so in the books, all of the Stark kids have some type of relationship with their wolf. So that's obviously not the direction they've went through in the story. And I'm neither here nor there. It's not a complaint. But that relationship was more than just, puppy and owner in the book, or direwolf in this case. So it's still nice for them to at least do a little bit of fan service with that relationship. So they have run into each other. They weren't, two ships that never did come together. But again, at least for me, I thought it was an interesting metaphor and foreshadowing for, that Arya's not down the path that she was walking when we first met her. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So let's transition over to sort of who we think, based on this episode and where things are going, whose stock is rising, whose stock is going down. And I'll start, and I think it's sort of a literal who is rising, and that is our good old buddy Grey Worm is having an interesting he had a happy time this episode.
Yeah, happy as he can be happy. I was really nervous if they're gonna show what it looked like down there, that it's been soldered off. I was like, don't show it. HBO, please don't.
Yeah,
I'll deal with his nice butt. You know what I mean? He's got a nice athletic butt. I'm jealous. I want to have a nice athletic butt, but I'll deal with that. I don't want to see the castration, please.
No, I just thought it was a good moment to sort of show their relationship that's been sort of budding ever since they met, and it's never
budding.
Yeah. It's never really reached a climax is what I was gonna go.
Nor will it.
I thought that was a good scene, though, to tie together to show that he has sort of evolved beyond his upbringing and his training and all, the brutality of this world that he's been put into. I thought that was a good scene to show, and it sort of, I think it will hint almost to his detriment. Like if I could go back and do the death pool, I'd put Grey Worm pretty high now.
Oh no!
It seems like it's telegraphing what may be happening in the next big fight that may be coming next episode.
Was Jaime going back to Casterly Rock? Because that's where he's going, right? Grey Worm's going to go to Casterly Rock, or
I don't know that they indicated. Did they? Or
they said the Unsullied were going to go take the Lannisters.
I'm talking about Jaime. Your question about Jaime was about Jaime.
I don't remember.
No, they didn't.
I think that was when Tommen was around.
He was talking to Sam Tarly's dad.
That's
about Olenna and wanting to get him to basically turn on them. But I don't know. I feel like, at least the way the show is set up here, I feel like Casterly Rock is a blind spot. And
You're
much like in season 2, right, when Robb had the idea to attack Casterly Rock, that was one of his plans when they were kind of mapping out their plans. There's some repetition there too that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ben, whose stock is up for you?
In terms of,
who in particular, what storyline really stood out this week?
Well, I liked Arya's. I liked that moment, but I think what stood out the most, I had to say it was Sam and what's his name. I like that
Jorah.
Jorah. Yeah, I like that that little plot line, and like how their stories have been woven together, because he knew it was his dad. He knew who was the other who what. God, man, this is so many seasons ago.
Right. So yeah. So Mormont was the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch when Jon joined and when Sam joined. Right.
And that's his father.
So that's Jorah's dad. Correct. And if you remember, matter of fact, a little bit of history. So Jorah was basically cast out from Westeros because he was dealing in slaves, and he was cast out. That's the reason why he was over in Essos.
Mm-hmm.
So he was kind of a shame to the Mormont family. That's the reason why he's not at Bear Island, kind of running the house. Instead, you have Lyanna Mormont. But his sword, the sword that was given, Wolfclaw, that was given to Jon Snow by the Lord Commander, should have been Jorah's if he hadn't been cast out.
That's interesting. Yeah, Sam stocks up also, not just helping him. He also the Raven was delivered, telling him about the Dragon
Glass.
Or Dragon Glass. I think he had a really good
Dragon Stone. So that's one of the big reasons why Jon kind of changes. He was kind of lukewarm on going to see meet with Daenerys, but then when he got that from Sam, it's like, okay, this is too good. I can't pass this up.
Then did you guys think that was a good? Because I'm interested in Sansa and Jon's storyline together, whether their bond's going to break, or did that when he told her that it's in good hands, did their bond strengthen? Do you think? In her point of view, you know what? He's
I personally yes, I personally think it's a feint. I think Jon and Sansa, they have differing opinions. Obviously, they have a lot of different experiences, but I think ultimately that bond's not going to get severed. I think.
You think so?
Yeah, that's my personal opinion. What do you think, Nick?
I think it's going to get severed.
Oh.
I mean, why did I pick Sansa? I feel like Sansa's dying. Yeah. So I feel like that moment was like, hey, we're getting along. And then the moment with Littlefinger's like, hey, I'm not getting along with him. And Littlefinger was with her. Yeah, I'm not going to go into it too much, but like he wanted Sansa also so he could be with her as kind of like king of the North. And now that's not happening. So what's his next
Sansa
play?
Suffered enough?
I think she has, but I also
the worst boyfriends in the entire show.
And this show is about suffering.
Two worst characters.
This show is about suffering for some people, and I think in the wars to come, she plays the littlest part. Like I don't see. I guess if you think about all the people who are going to be involved in the big war that probably is at the end of this thing, do you see her being there? And if not, then how do you think she's going to go? And that's kind of my.
Well, if you think about the big war, I think one of the things we know, in addition to Dragonglass, is Valyrian steel. That also cuts down White Walkers. So I think it's probably good for us to keep an eye on and remember who has Valyrian weapons. Brienne is one of them.
Yeah.
She still has Oathkeeper, which, ironically enough, was created from melting down ice. Tywin did that, I think, in season 2, right? He melted down ice, which was Ned Stark's big blade. He melted it into 2 different weapons. Oathkeeper was one of them, and that's one Brienne has.
Can I ask you a question about Valyrian steel?
Mm-hmm.
Where is that mine in the book? Why is it made from dragon glass? You know what I mean? Is it?
You want me? Yeah, let me get. So Valyrian steel was made in Valyria, which is essentially, in the show that we're watching, it's essentially like a historical society, kind of like Rome is to us. It's a society that was great and basically ran the world and then collapsed. There's a lot of different story threads talking about why it collapsed, but Valyrian steel and how to mine it and how to make it was lost to history. So no one really knows how to create more. You have a few people that understand a little bit of, and Tywin made this comment about how he found one of the only people left in the world that knows how to forge with it, not make it, that he was able to melt one down and kind of rebuild it. But as far as the creation of it, it's essentially, for all intents and purposes, it's a finite resource in the world. Now, Dragonglass is a more cruder one that's obviously effective against White Walkers. We've seen that, but so is Valyrian steel. So Valyrian steel, also sometimes referred to as dragon steel. So you have Dragonglass, dragon steel, and Davos made mention of it, but we might have dragon fire that would also kill the White Walkers.
Yeah.
So
very nice. Song of Fire and Ice. But that city though, they made mention to it. That's where all the stone people are. You're right.
So,
that's where was that it? Okay.
So basically, you had the Doom of Valeria, which we could get down on the history at some point, but essentially, a big cataclysmic event wipes out the entire society almost overnight. Very sudden thing. Valeria is it's almost like a poison area. If you go through it, it's considered dangerous. One of the things that makes Euron so mysterious is he's one of the few people, he's one of the only people that claim to have went to Valeria and then came back alive. Everyone else that has went to see it has not returned. So that's like a big thing in his mythos that makes him kind of incredible. Sailing near it, we saw a little scene with Jorah and Tyrion where they came in. Matter of fact, the whole reason why Jorah has grayscale is he was touched by a stone man. A stone man is essentially someone who got grayscale, lost their minds, and they're essentially wild beasts, which is what we see Jorah turning into. If I can shift back, because Matt originally started this by talking about stock up. Ben's probably the most accurate in talking about Jorah as far as high to low, right? Even if his stock's not super high yet, that we have reason now to see that arc turn the other way up. So I'd probably agree with him. To throw out another name though, I think Lady Melisandre. When we last seen her, she was basically getting kicked out of the North by someone who she literally brought back to life. Was basically telling her to get lost and she'd be executed if she came back. So I think her kind of getting in with Dany is obviously really good for her stock.
And luring Jon Snow back so that she won't get killed and still talk to him.
What about you, Nick? What's your stock thought?
So I was gonna say Sam, but I'm not gonna say that because Ben said that. So my stock is up for Euron Greyjoy because the Sand Snakes suck, and he took out at least 2 of them. So hoping we find out it's a trifecta, but we'll keep our fingers crossed.
That's a really good pick. We've had all this time thinking how Yara is supposedly awesome at sailing and whatnot, and we've learned that Euron's really he's the king.
I will say that one of the Sand Snakes had a great throw of a spear through a neck during that battle. So I can respect that. Like the fighting. Oh my God, season 5 was the hardest season I think to get through, and a lot of it was that Dorne stuff. It was just.
I totally agree. Even the Dorne fighting sucked.
Kind of ham-fisted. Those ladies aren't. I feel bad because like if I tried to act, I'd be horrible. But the Dorne stuff has just always kind of felt
forced,
not good. Those characters not fully fleshed out or fully realized well on screen. So I was happy to see them go. I mean, they served their story purpose and now they're gone and they went in kind of a cool way. So thanks, Euron, for getting rid of them.
Well, gosh darn it.
The one thing I'll say about the Euron part is that he clearly is inhabiting the new Ramsay kind of lunatic.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. The one thing I wasn't it has nothing to do with his character, but it was almost all with just sort of how they did the sea battle. After full disclosure, we saw Dunkirk last night. The fact that you could kind of see everything, the fact that they did this battle at sea at night, it felt kind of
condensed,
spent all of our budget almost on all these great battles that are going to come later. So we're just going to kind of make it really dark and not show you a lot of water and ships and stuff.
And focus on this one ship.
They made it very simplified with, here's the ship that Euron happened to jump over onto. Oh, it's the same one that Yara's on. And we're just going to go as quickly as possible.
Careful how you pronounce his name. You might piss him off. I'm just real quick. I think it's actually the battle wasn't the best and it was dark and but it was pretty good. It was pretty enjoyable. So if that's the low light battle, I'm kind of.
It's because the Dorns died. That's why you loved it so much. It's pretty good. Those Dorn girls died.
I would also go back and remind you, in season 1 and season 2, some of the battles. We very frequently had one battle where Tyrion was ready to march into battle, got knocked out, and then we see him being drug off the battlefield, and the battle was never shown. Right? We had a couple where one of Robb Stark's battles, we saw the wolf show up and growl at a couple guys, I think peeing. or take it out, and we didn't see the whole battle. So while I totally understand what you're saying, this was not a Battle of the Bastards. This was not the Bay at King's Landing, but it was definitely a lot more than what we've got in the past when they're trying to save money.
Well, I think if you're the showrunners, you could say that they're picking and choosing their battles.
We are on it.
They need to get timeout box for bad puns. Right now, it would just be Matt and I.
Speaking of stock down, Ben Colby. I'll let you guys. Nick, why don't you go first? Like, what was something that was not as great for you this episode, or whose character do you think not looking, whose outlook is not looking?
I'm gonna call it the Dorn girls, right?
Well, unfortunately for them, their stock is way down. No, so yeah, this might upset Matt a little bit. I will say it's not really a stock down, so I can't say that. I'm just gonna say something that I didn't necessarily like. Was the entire sex whatever scene between Grey Worm and Missandei. I felt like it could have been. I feel like you could have got the same oomph with a little less oomph.
Well, like he had less of an oomph, you know.
I guess maybe showing that much, like it was uncomfortable, like the entire thing, and I don't know, like I felt like in terms of their love and their relationship growing, the only thing that was really kind of the payoff there for me maybe was that Grey Worm trusted her to you know take to go that far or whatever, but like. I honestly felt like I had more romantic moments between them in other instances. So the fact that drug out that long.
Now, do you think it would have been more romantic if they'd closed the door?
Yeah, something like that. They would have needed somebody there to hold it, though. Yeah.
But Hodor wasn't there to. Yeah, Hodor wasn't there to close it.
Yeah. Ben, another timeout box for you.
And I know Bran, the pervy teen that he is, was just warged into Grey Worm the entire time. So. No, I'm gonna go to a different. Nah, that's fine. That's my down.
Brandon, what about you?
Okay. As I kind of, it was a cool scene, even though. So they made the big show and they kind of showed us what Qyburn's secret is as far as what his solution is for taking out the dragons. And they showed a scorpion and they let, Cersei pull the trigger and fire it. And that's all great and good. But if you've just got one and you're having to reload, I feel like they need to show more to show that they've got somebody who's skilled at firing it at a moving target that's flying in the air. I feel like to make it I understand it's a threat. And I thought for what they showed, I guess it was convincing in saying that it's a threat, but to think about how that's going to be used in the field, there's a lot more that kind of needs to be shown there to make it a viable threat. And I don't know if they're going to do that later. If that's the only scene we're going to get to see it as a threat, and then we'll see it actually being used in battle, I might be a little disappointed because I think that needs to be set up. But to say something we've talked about before, I think there's no doubt that as far as Cersei's concerned, all respect to the Mountain, but I think Qyburn's her MVP and has been for a couple seasons now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say with regards to, I think you're right that they need to sort of explain it maybe a little bit more. I think this was a good starter for like showing the dragon's vulnerability. Like that, one of my big anticipating moments for this season was how are they going to show dragons being weak? And like, this is at least down that path. So,
right.
But in terms of practical use, I think you're right. I think they need to, we need to see it in battle in a real world situation, maybe.
I thought it was great that he made a callback to something that he didn't see, but we as the viewers saw, is that when they had that ambush attack in Meereen, we saw one of the dragons in the dragon pit getting wounded by men with spears. So I thought it's great that Qyburn made a callback to that. I do kind of wish as viewers we maybe saw touching base afterwards where Daenerys is trying to help heal the dragon, or they're worried about the dragon. Or I wish they would have followed that a little bit so that we saw weakness in one of them. But really, we just see that scene in the dragon pit, and then they've kind of left. And since then, we haven't had any reason to think that one of the dragons is still injured or was nursing an injury. I think that could have played better if they'd been. They did call back to it here, so at least they've not forgotten about it. But I do wonder if they could have been carrying that story forward to make us feel that vulnerability that you're seeking. Yeah, because she's basically got the nuclear weapons in Westeros at this point, right? Dragons.
She just needs to launch the mountain at a dragon in that sort of thing. Just shoot him right at a dragon.
That is what you just spoiled it for us. That's
Yeah.
going to happen now.
That's the book, right? George R. R. Martin goes into like 55 pages of the logistics of
Now-
the mountain being
Actually, good
propelled.
segue there. You talk about George R. R. Martin. You talk about the pages that he spent. One of the things in the books that's not in the series is there's actually a horn called Dragonbinder. And this horn is something that Euron has that supposedly we've not seen evidence him use it. Well, we saw him use it, but we haven't seen it used against a dragon. But ostensibly, the horn can actually control dragons. Again, it's a big 6-foot horn. And I thought it was interesting in the last episode when he was talking about how he's going to go get her a gift. And I'm thinking as a reader in the book, Euron has something that Cersei would probably value quite a bit, right? If she had some ability to take control of a dragon or somehow interfere with the control of the dragons, that would be an awesome thing to have. So you talk about that vulnerability. And again, you're going to have a lot more information in the books, but they've at least spread in different plot lines for you to kind of consider what might be their weaknesses in the book than we've seen in the show.
So why would he say, "I'm going to get you something that you want" to Cersei, and then go get his niece? It's interesting.
Is that what he was after? If you actually thought, he sent his men downstairs and they got Ilaria who killed Marcella. So
That's true.
if you
There
think
you go.
about it, that's something Cersei would want. I know a lot of people on our podcast were thinking Tyrion was the target.
Yeah.
But Tyrion obviously would be a hard guy because he's a hard get because he's going to be next to the queen. But Ilaria was a piece that was being kind of moved around on the battlefield, and I think Cersei's going to be very happy to get her.
Yeah.
Ben, what about you?
Well, he jumped off the boat, so I'm gonna say Theon is had a really down week, like probably his lowest.
And
But
he was
surrounded
by a ring of fire.
Yeah. I thought that was like, it reminded me of the scene from Hook. You remember Hook, the old that old little classic back in the 90s?
Run home,
seasons
Jack.
where-
Run home, Jack.
Well, when he turns to be, when he's Peter Pan again, he's flying around killing pirates, and he goes, says his daughter, he goes, "Are you Peter Pan?" He goes, "Okay," and the pirate jumps out the window because he doesn't want to fight Peter Pan. It was that scene. It was really actually really funny. Like it was like, I don't think it was supposed to be funny, but it was really like a Muppet kind of moment. Like jumps out, you know.
All right, there's a new penalty box. There's a 15-minute penalty. Did
Are you
anybody
kidding
else
me?
think it was funny?
I thought it was funny.
No, I know you did. Did anybody else think it was funny?
When he abandoned his sister and left her to die
When he
by
was obviously having shock and the traumatic of the situation.
No,
and-
no, I didn't think that part was funny. I think the part that he's just like, whoop, I'm gonna jump off. That one part was funny.
yakety sax behind him, jumping off the boat.
I fully expected him to go Tyrannosaurus Rex arms again and be like, "Reek," and then jump off. And he didn't do it.
He had post-traumatic stress syndrome.
There was some gruesome stuff going on. People were cutting out tongues and cutting off body parts, which
Yeah.
obviously he'd had experience with Roose, somebody doing that and keeping people alive. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually felt
not
like
Roose, sorry, Ramsay.
I was simultaneously like, "Damn it, Theon," but also like, "Oh, Theon, like poor." Like he wants to, like you can tell he wanted to like be able to save his sister or be there for his sister, but he just didn't
What do
have
you
it.
think about the foreshadowing? Because it was just the scene earlier. We had Ilaria kind of almost making fun that Yara had mentioned that he was her protector,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and then we see it in evidence that Ilaria was right on the money, saying this is not a protector. That's not what this is.
You need a mountain.
He's a
If-
wine steward.
If Yara is still alive, they've left the door open, I guess, for him to sort of do what she couldn't do for him and save her. So when he was prisoner, she came for him and he was too far gone or whatever. Now it's sort of, if she's still alive, they're flipping the tables to, even though he was a coward, they're allowing him to potentially even still redeem himself. But at this point, it's like, geez, dude.
No.
Like-
If she sees him again, you might well flip back to the Deadpool and look on my list. If she sees him again, she's not going. She is not going to pass go. She's going directly to taking care of him.
Directly to murder. So my stock down, and this is my bias. I know Nick and I think have very different opinions on stuff like this. But my down was the very start of the episode. With everything with Daenerys, I felt like the tension with Varys felt very manufactured, almost like it wasn't like we need to fill time, but it was like, oh, we hadn't thought about this yet, and we should probably have a scene about it. Like Varys has been with her for a really, really long time, and maybe it was like we need to like, oh, she's gonna be like, we need to see you pledging your loyalty now. Like, we're not going to deal with this now that we're on the cusp of taking the kingdom. So, but it felt very like out of nowhere for her to like confront him like that.
But I did enjoy his exposition of his backstory more. I really liked that.
That was good.
He was good. She sucked. The problem is she's just not the best actress in the world. So like, well,
she's awesome when she's speaking Valerian, though.
Why?
There's nobody better at speaking Valerian.
Like, she was part of my favorite stuff in the previous season. It was mainly, it's not like the acting, or it's just like, oh, she's standing up for herself, or she did this crazy cool shit and burn up all these calls or whatever. But yeah, I agree. Like, most of the stuff she did in this episode wasn't great.
I think you make a good point, Matt. I think that conversation seemed very legitimate. It's not exactly clear why it didn't happen a season ago. Why didn't, shortly after they met, why didn't they come to terms with it? It reminds me in a weird way of the Sansa Jon thing. I mean, he literally died and came back from the dead like the day she came back and met him. We know that they've at least discussed it, but I'd be asked if one of you died and came back from the dead. I think it'd be something we'd be discussing probably every day for a month.
Yeah.
Well, and even then it was like, as somebody who was like, oh, why did she go to Westeros? Why did she go to Dragonstone at all? And it's like, oh, well, it was her home. It was like, she needs to stop off there. But like, then it's like, they start this episode with like, what are we doing? Let's go. Let's like most of the main characters, including Daenerys, are like, oh, this doesn't even feel like home. We should just go fight right now. But then obviously they cooler heads prevail with like Tyrion and Varys being and Tyrion. I thought that was a really good scene with Tyrion knowing exactly what Cersei's plan was, and going the direction to cut her off with what her public stance is to try and keep her allies. I thought that was good, but it kind of was like a punch to the face to be like, oh yeah, why aren't we going and attacking right now?
Well, and that's a discussion Yara would have had with her on the boat ride over, right? So
yeah, it's like
or before they left, but it was a legitimate conversation, I think, for Ilaria and Lady Olenna, because they hadn't met with her before. She's made her landing, and that's where they're getting a chance to talk to her. I think something else to consider is this was the home of the Targaryens, right? So there's dragon caves, there's stuff already there for the dragons. So when they're coming over, unless they want to, after that long voyage, they want to just land right in a battle, they would have had to kind of go somewhere.
It only took them like 15 minutes to sail across the narrow sea, though, right? So there might have been an opportunity.
Oh, really?
To not have that conversation in that 15 minutes.
Yeah. That's one thing about this show that's interesting. Like in some cases, it shows like these grand, long journeys. It's kind of like part of the struggle with the Lord of the Rings too. In some cases, that it takes forever to get to point A to point B for some characters. But for other characters, they're like time travelers, So there's not a lot of consistency. But I think that's because the world is so grand, and they only have so many episodes to tell all these things, But that's one thing that's interesting.
Well, and like for instance, we saw Sam arriving at Old Town. I mean, technically at the end of last season, but we really started getting into his studies in this season, and then we got that montage. That was obviously in the first episode. That was obviously meant for us to understand that a lot of time had passed. He's been there for a while.
Yeah.
So even though the very next episode, John's receiving a raven from him and ready to act on that information, I think it's not necessarily meant to be one right after the other.
Are these are they supersonic ravens? Like, are they just
Don't stop me now. I'm having such a fly time.
I will
I'm
say this,
having a
though.
ball.
You got to be careful. You can't complain about chess piece moves and setting up the chessboard, and then also talk about they're being unrealistic with the time, and that should really take 4 or 5 episodes.
don't point out our hypocrisy.
I think there's reason. I think there's reason to believe, in looking at the diet of the Maesters in Old Town, that all of those shits happened in one day. Like, he just was. That could have been, because they're just eating this stuff that just looks like it's 90% shit already. So,
Sloppy Joe day. Yeah.
As that
I know you
montage
kids
went on,
love you, Sloppy Joe.
as that montage went on, it was hard to tell which one was being emptied and which one was being filled.
They did continue the Jim Broadbent, Grand Maester, and everyone else, like, just totally not believing anything Sam says, and
Right.
positioning Sam as sort of the, like, brilliant newcomer, I guess. But in all honesty, it to me, it more so seems, it's something we talked about in the first episode, of like, they're unwilling to listen to anybody. Like,
it seems like they're
he's
lazy.
clearly like he's not that smart, and he hasn't been around, but like, he has experience, but they won't listen.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting kind of dynamic to keep going.
That's the job of the man, not to listen, right?
Well, it's kind of interesting, observation they're trying to make with that, of academia versus experience. You have academia that, that haven't seen a lot of things, hasn't seen a White Walker and dealt with all these different things. And they're always going to doubt things. They do things differently than someone who has been in the field, so to speak, and so it's kind of hard to get through to them. Wow.
So overall, what are we looking forward to for episode 3 next week?
I want to see Jon Snow and that meet up with I can't think right now. Daenerys, sorry. There's so many names.
Yeah. I'll just say I would agree with, and I feel like it's sort of the trend with not as much episode 1, but episode 2 was sort of, let's start the, like, team ups we've been sort of hoping would happen, of like, oh, here's the scene where all of the allies of Daenerys are all in the same room, and here's the scene where we're gonna tease out Arya reuniting with the Stark. So I think episode 3, I actually think we may get sort of wrenches in the system a little bit, like the path. Like, I could see Jon meeting up with Daenerys right away, but I don't know if obviously the Stark reunion isn't going to happen. But maybe she may see Sansa in episode. I think that'll be pretty cool.
Yeah.
We also didn't get.
Only have 2.
Go ahead.
Sorry, so they only have 2 Starks in a room at once. Like that's like they can't fill. They can't go past that quota.
We also didn't see anything with Bran this episode. We know he's coming through the wall, so he's not that far from Winterfell. So that's another Stark that we might.
I forgot about that.
We gotta get the Hound and the Brotherhood back too. We didn't have any Hound this week. I'm curious. I'm curious. I was figuring I'd see you shedding tears, Ben. I'm curious in Winterfell what's going to happen with Sansa now kind of running things, because she has a differing opinion than Jon Snow, and Littlefinger is going to have his little finger wrapped around her whatever. So
oh man,
I feel like he's going to give her like the half smile, and he's going to talk Sansa, don't you know, blah, 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 you should be the Queen of the North. And like, because Sansa went on that rant in episode 1 about where Jon was like, it seems like you admire Cersei. Like, I feel like Sansa has a little bit of a power. She kind of has a little bit of a power want as well. So I'm curious what's going to happen at Winterfell without Jon Snow there.
Brandon? bring us up.
Ben took probably my number one is I do want to see that meetup between Jon Snow and Daenerys. That's something's been a long time coming. Also, when you think about the entire name of the series, Fire and Ice, she's obviously fire. He, Lord Snow, ice. I really want to see where that goes. But something else is Euron, right? So he's just obviously had a successful battle. This was the biggest fleet, other than potentially dragons. This was the biggest fleet thing he was going to be coming up against, and he's obviously won that handily. I think that's going to be interesting as he returns to, I assume, turns to King's Landing with the prize for Cersei. I'm curious to see how that goes and how they end up implementing that, because we've been given as we look at the stage, we've been given this feeling like Dany has overwhelming forces, and she still does and will as long as she has the dragons. But obviously that was a big part of her plan as far as having the Dornish shipped through with these ships, which most appear, at least it did not appear at least that it was only their ship, even though that's the one they focused on. I got the feeling that it was a decisive battle overall.
I
What
guess
about you, Matt?
We'll just have to see. No, I was going to say the obviously the meetups kind of based on I think I'm getting into I'm lulled into the slow parts, the allure of how all these alliances and stuff can still be so meaningful and so interesting. After the finales, you're all ready for more fights and big battles and stuff like that. But now 2 episodes in, even with the battle at the end of this one, I'm super into all the minutia of it and all the progress of people going to meet up and agree alliances, stuff like that. I think the couple of the things though is that, again, there's 5 episodes left. We haven't seen the Night King, the White Walkers really all that much beyond the first little glimpse in the first episode. I think they could play back in maybe at the end of this episode to make sort of the threat more immediate especially for Sansa, and I think that'd be an interesting idea. So that's that's the only other thing I can think of that we didn't really get in this episode to sort of push the 2-front war side of it, because now it seems almost like we're consolidating a little too much.
What do you anticipate Dany's reaction being when Jon kind of sets out the stage for her? What do you think her reaction? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, they clearly have Jon is very focused on the big picture of the world could end, whereas everybody else in the series is more focused on
the Iron Throne,
lesser goals, and ruling and the throne and stuff like that. And so I think there will be immediate butting of heads with that. I mean, it seems like Daenerys will be we are going to go get the throne first, and then that will enable me to unite everybody around one cause with you. That's where I think it'll go.
I know as a book reader, it was really interesting when Stannis kind of turned his attention to the north and took that fight seriously. He was someone, that and in the show as well, you thought, oh, okay, he's going to make his move. Maybe there's some people here that rooted for him to take over the throne. And then he kind of diverted his attention north to the greater battle and started listening to Melisandre. As you pointed out, Jon's completely focused on that. That's where his priority is. It'd be interesting to see who else he can convince that has more real power than he does at this point.
Yep. It'll be interesting for sure. It will be interesting.
It will be. It will be.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, for putting up with our technical difficulties, hopefully we'll get those ironed out for next week. But I think overall this was a very interesting episode 2, and it looks to be a very interesting episode 3. So,
for sure.
Agreed.
Thank you all for sticking with us, and tune in next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.